قد ذهبت أربابه كل من سار على الدرب وصل بازدياد العلم إرغام العدا وجمال العلم إصلاح العمل جمل المنطق بالنحو فمن يحرم الإعراب بالنطق اختبل انظم الشعر ولازم مذهبي في اطراح الرفض لا تبغي النحل.
Okay, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to episode 6 of Ibn Battuta's Boat. Ibn Battuta's Boat is a podcast that seeks to tap into an element of critical thinking and inspiring the next generation of Muslims living in the West. And so in our sixth offering, we're going with the theme of what is the role of an imam in the community, and what is the role of the masajids in the community, the mosques in the community. And so we've had, up until now, we've had speakers ranging from Ustad Khalid Hassan, student at Al-Qasim, who talked about the idea of extremism and how to kind of reconcile that with one's journey of studying Islamic sciences. We've also had Sheikh Abu Ubaid, who talked about the human crisis and kind of going back to this element of being human before internalizing our faith. And then we've also had brothers Yahya Rabi and Ustad Jamal Abdel Nasser, who are talking about our relationship with the Quran. We've also had brother in the community, Ismail Musoke, who was talking about this concept of the diaspora and reconciling that with the creative arts. And so,
and inshallah, this one is a very special episode. I would say that for every single one, but this one is a different kind of episode. We will have a discussion with an imam that's not just been an imam for 10 years, but has been since 1998. So how many years is that, Muhammad?
10 years.
No, it's not.
20, subhanAllah.
20 years, subhanAllah. Imam Shakeel Begg, it goes by the name Imam Shakeel Begg. He's the Imam in Lewisham Islamic Center, where Muhammad Chulangani has met him before. And what we intend to discuss in this episode is incredibly important. It is incredibly important and incredibly neglected, because you won't find these kind of discussions happening. So we want to start off, inshallah, with his early life and education, and how growing in modern Britain, how it was like to be as an imam growing in modern Britain, and the various challenges that they have. As a respectable imam, the changes in the political climate has had a huge impact, I can imagine, not just on as him as an imam, but on the Muslims as a whole, isn't it? So that's the first discussion that happens, inshallah. That is a very important discussion to have to start off with. And secondly, inshallah, we want to talk about how the imam role is in general. Imams, there are so many imams. Go to any masjid, they'll have at least one imam. Some have 2, some have 3, some have 4. Some are young, some are old. Regardless of these different factors, imams are very important. They have a huge part to play in society, and we're going to have a discussion with Imam Shakeel Begg on this exact topic. What is it like to be an imam? Have you got what it takes to be an imam? Maybe the various discussions on, are the imams being underpaid? How is the management structure in a masjid? Does it help imams or does it make it worse? And I think this kind of discussion, it will be very beneficial for our listeners, inshallah, because I think there are young people out there who perhaps are very smart dunyawi wise, but they look at the imamship role or the imamate role as something is not worth it. But in this discussion, you will see that there's a lot of worth in what happens as imam. Thirdly, we talk about the reflections of an imam. So, as you imagine, as we have an imam with us as a guest, without a doubt we'll have to talk about reflections and what is it exactly that he's noticed in terms of the political climate, because the political climate has had a huge change. It's been a huge change. Although it's been incremental, it has been a huge change over time. So what's been happening on, and how can we remain firm? More importantly, how can we remain firm given these changes? Fourthly, we want to talk about a very particular case that has been that circulated the news roughly about 2 years ago, I believe, Muhammad. And 2 years ago, roughly, Imam Shakeel Begg went through and undergone a case where he filed a case against the BBC, and based on various statements that were made. Yeah, the libel case, as Muhammad has clarified. We want to give a bit more detail, a bit more clarity on the situation on a personal level, more importantly, on a personal level with our Imam, and how he felt or what he went through, just so the listeners can truly understand what kind of heroship or bravery is required to be in such a position. And finally, more importantly, we will end on a very positive note, inshallah ta'ala. I hope it is a positive note, where we discuss the vision of a connected Muslim community. And this vision is such an important topic to discuss, because when we look to the future, we will see our role in society, how we can help society through Imams, through local scholars, through whatever form of da'wah in terms of the UK itself. And inshallah you will enjoy this episode, and we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bless our guest speaker, to bless our producer, to bless our radio hosts today, covering this episode, and the people who are working behind this to set this up in terms of research. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to keep us, make us from the mukhlasin, the people who are sincere to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we ask Allah to put barakah in this episode so that people can listen to this and extract the beneficial knowledge from it, inshaAllah ta'ala. Jazakum khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to our 6th episode. Welcome to our 6th episode of Ibn Battuta's boat. How was the tajweed this time? I made sure that ta had the correct makhraj. Yeah?
You're following in my footsteps, yeah?
Yeah,
good.
It's good, always good to start off with the right tajweed. And we're with a very special guest today, mashallah. One that we have so much to cover given such a small amount of time. So we ask Allah to grant all of us concise speech and to make this actually very beneficial. And I have so many questions, and Shu'aib has probably so many questions, and Muhammad has so many questions on so many aspects. Like for example, one thing that's really personal to me is, are Imams underrepresented in society? Not just Muslims, but in society. And how can we fix certain issues that are associated with Imams or with masajid? And this is one of the things that really, because I grew up in an area where there were no masajid, and I lived the majority of my life where there was not a single masjid. And so for me, seeing Imams and what they do is truly inspirational. So without further ado, inshallah, I want to start off with a very good icebreaker. So I was thinking, if you could give me obviously you've been an Imam at Lewisham Islamic Centre since 1998, so that's about 20 years, mashallah. That's nearly as old as Shu'aib. I'm joking. I know.
Older than
anyway, but maybe is there 3 things that you could tell us that really stood out for you in terms of that was so interesting that you would like to share? If it's good, bad, or ugly, or extremely funny, 3 things as you've seen as an Imam that might just not just inspire, but start off something goodly as well. Start off some really good humour, inshallah.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Firstly, Ustad Shu'aib, Ustad Muhammad, and Ustad Asim, alhamdulillah for giving me this opportunity. Thank you very much. And also this in terms of Ibn Battuta's boat. Hope I got the tajweed right as well. But I think as a medium in terms of engagement with the Muslim community, the wider community with youngsters, it's a very important initiative. So we need individuals, youngsters, even Shu'aib is a youngster. Yeah, we need initiatives like this, inshallah. So we're inshallah engaging with the people, inshallah. In terms of the icebreaker, I'll say a few important points. I think one was with a very young community and also a lot of reverts. So you find sometimes expectations are very high. And everything you do, for some reason they think it's sunnah. So sometimes I'm walking a certain way, sitting a certain way. Imam, is that the sunnah? I must just follow everything that the Messenger of Allah done. So that's kind of expectations are very high.
Wow, okay.
In terms of challenges, you'll find, the social issues, and especially some of the marital problems. And counselling, I didn't envisage it would be so much, and it becomes overwhelming sometimes. That's kind of been a big challenge. And also, I didn't envisage in terms of the masjid or myself being in the spotlight with, certain issues happening, in UK context or worldwide and so on. So that was kind of these 3 things, the main kind of challenges or something new that I found.
So you weren't seeking the trouble, you just came.
Yeah, as Malcolm X said, we didn't land on Plymouth Rock, it landed right on top of us. So something similar to that.
Have there been any sort of moments from that first bit in terms of when people come and they think everything you do is a sunnah? Has there been anything particularly funny in that regard? Any stories that you can remember?
Yeah, I think one time I was just sitting down and relaxing in the masjid with my legs stretched, and a youngster came in and he said, "Look, is that the sunnah?" And you're supposed to sit like this. I said, brother, look, this is just me sitting and relaxing. And not everything I do is like, going to be 100% sunnah or something.
So that's a huge responsibility.
It is, and sometimes that also becomes, burdensome. That people are watching you closely, and you've got to be careful in terms of what you do, what you say, and how people kind of perceive that as well.
Do you think like over 20 years, it's kind of shaped your personality to be somebody that's always watchful of yourself? Do you think it was like that at the start, or do you think it kind of developed over 20 years to always be watchful because you're going to be in the public eye?
I would say yes and no. Yes, in the sense, you automatically become a bit more careful. But no, in the sense, especially with the Lewisham community and especially with the large revert community, they are much less judgmental than others. You'll find they are quite flexible, and even if they see you sometimes making a mistake, they are more accommodating than maybe others. Yeah.
In terms of like nationalities in the masjid, you have quite a diverse range of nationalities. It's quite, is that the case?
We always have a discussion within the mosque, sometimes in the lectures or reminders. And I asked a question, I said, look, can we define or describe this masjid with an ethnicity? And you can't. People say you can't. It is, whether it be from West Africa, East Africa, the Middle East, Far East, subcontinent. Then you got the kind of like Caribbean community, you got the British-born community, you got the white kind of Irish community, English community.
Mashallah.
Everybody is really there. Yeah. So
why do you think that is? Because there's so many other areas and other masjids. We see that generally there's one ethnicity in one masjid or another, even if they're not pushing out that, maybe the imams are not actually pushing that we're only going to take care of this community. I think there's minority of masjids that kind of do that, but I think a lot of masjids, they don't generally try and push out we're only going to take care of this or that, but they do only attract one community or another. Why is it, do you think, in Lewisham that it's like that? Is it because of the area, or do you think it's something else to do with the Muslims there?
Area is diverse. It is quite diverse, and I think in terms of the Afro-Caribbean community, it's got a large percentage out, definitely over 20% or 30% probably of Caribbean heritage. So that plays a part. The area is actually diverse and so on. The other issues, I think, in terms of our classes, the khutbah, the classes, the lectures, everything is in English. Even if we do have a guest speaker that speaks in Arabic, we make sure it's translated. So the khutbah is, other than the ayat and ahadith, it's all in English. So that plays a part in terms of you actually, welcoming those who can't speak, let's say, Arabic, Urdu, Somali, and so on. So
it's like the medium for everybody.
It's the medium for everybody.
Okay, so I was thinking. It was just maybe a week ago, I don't know how it popped in my mind, but I was thinking, now that we've been sort of established in Britain for quite a while now, Muslims, I mean, as a community, that English has sort of become the medium for everybody to communicate, whether you're from Africa, from Asia, from wherever you are. But I don't know why, but I thought, shouldn't it be the case that Arabic should be the medium for us as an ummah, as a Muslim community? And do you think that we should work towards that should be our medium, or do you think that, okay, because we're living here, English is definitely going to be the medium that we're going to kind of bring together?
I think that's an interesting point. I mean, one is, to reflect on the ummah globally. The Arabic-speaking population is a very small percentage compared to the others. So that's a reflection of the ummah anyway, and that, of course, reflects here. At the same time, of course, we can't say, look, Arabic is not important. The Book of Allah Ta'ala is in Arabic, and to understand that properly, and especially if you are going to kind of like Islamic sciences, to understand those sciences, it's important to go back to the original language. At the same time, we can't say, look, that's for everybody. And I think that also is very important in our message, and you could say da'wah or call, that we can't push everybody to be ulama and to learn the Arabic language. Everybody is different. The Sahaba were different. Not everybody was, you could say, specializing in Quranic sciences or Hadith sciences. There were Sahaba, and there were others who, had other specialities and so on. That also reflects in the Ummah globally, and must reflect in terms of, us here. At the same time, understanding, as a discussion, where is home? And if I was to say to you youngsters, what is home?
I think what Muhammad recited at the start, maybe that's your home, inshallah. I think that was the Zumar, wasn't it?
No, Dar Salam. Journey to paradise.
Yeah. I mean, that's the, you could say, ultimate aim and abode. But here, in terms of, if you go to, let's say, countries where parents or grandparents come from, when you go there, they see you as foreign. You eventually start saying, you know what, I want to go home. Yeah.
I was just thinking that as well.
We just spoke about this in the previous episode.
Okay.
We had the whole discussion on how, you know, you go back home and you feel like a stranger.
Diaspora,
Yeah. Subhanallah.
Yeah. So that, you know, comes back to, look, this has become home.
Yeah.
The language of, you know, of the people here is English. You need to engage with them, which is the wider, you know, wider community, and thus English, it's kind of like our medium of communication.
Yeah.
Even if we, you know, what is mother tongue? Is it really the tongue that just your mother speaks and that you hear when you're born, or is it something that you're really fluent in? So sometimes parents speaks in one language, the kids, they respond back in English. That's become their mother tongue because that's what they feel comfortable with. You know, so in reality, this has become home, and we need to kind of like, you know, engage with people in the English language.
So some masajid already are blocked off because they don't do that. Some masajid are still in certain areas, so I'm not going to name areas, but they're still facing these issues where they can't speak. They haven't got English speaking khutbas, let alone talks. Khutbas themselves, the bayans themselves are in Urdu. For example.
I mean, you know, there's been a debate on anti-blackness recently in the last few weeks. You know, imagine this. You become a Muslim, you come to a masjid, and you can't understand anything that's going on. The people around you are speaking in another language, it's not your language. The lecture or the class or the khutbah is in another language that you can't relate with. How will you feel? You know? So I think, you know, masajid, I mean, look, what's the ayah, Ustad Muhammad? وَمَا أَرْسَلْنَا مِن رَسُولٍ إِلَّا بِلِسَانِ قَوْمِهِ. I never sent a messenger except with the language of its people. You know, so that needs to definitely change. That definitely needs to change in all masajid.
Straight away, mashallah. 12 minutes in, or how many minutes we're in, we've got to the big issues. So I'm really happy how everything's going so far, alhamdulillah. Because I think personally, we've all had academic background, we've all studied, and this is beyond, this is almost common sense. Look at your people around you, look at the community, okay? Maybe there's 70 or 60% Pakistani Muslims there, or Asian community there. But what about the other percentage that you haven't analysed? Or have you looked into the other kind of cultures that are there? How are you going to accommodate for those cultures? Because this masjid doesn't belong to you, it belongs to Allah. This is the Baytullah. And so the perspective is gone. Now it's all about securing funds, and you know, sometimes it's almost power struggle, and all of these things are slowly like bogging down the core issues that are not being addressed. And one of them, like you just mentioned, is that, well, you didn't mention it as an issue, but to me I see it as an issue, is that some masajid do not have that. They have that understanding of, well, actually there are Muslims that are in this area that don't understand this language, so we need to accommodate for that. And I think, you know, even let's just use ELM as the example, mashallah. The khutbah has, obviously, Bangladeshi community in this area is the largest, without a doubt. So they make sure that the khutbah has Bengali in there. They make sure the khutbah has obviously Arabic in there, and it has English. It's like it's a compromise, but it's a step forward in the right direction. And that's exactly what we need in the Muslim community, that we need young people, and not just young people, imams, to realize the core issues that are actually running around. As you've probably seen with your counselling and, you know, helping reverts out and all these different things, you're probably realizing that there's actually a lot of core issues that are not being addressed in many masajid. But anyway, that calls on to other discussions, inshallah. But I want to go into a bit more specific detail. Maybe we'll discuss these later on, inshallah. But inshallah, your early life and education. So we know that, we know that you embarked on a journey towards sacred knowledge, and you went to do Islamic studies, or Sharia, was it in Islamic University of Medina? And that was, when was this?
Before Shuaib was born.
Thinking of me today. All right.
It was the year after I was born, actually.
Okay, so actually you went. Okay, well, all fairness is due, man. It was easy to go to Medina back then, as in terms to get an apply and stuff like that. It was a lot easier than it is now. And I know that a lot of brothers listening to this thinking, I want to go Medina, I want to go Medina. Anyway, that's a discussion in of itself. But you know, what made you choose that path? It's a very interesting discussion, because you're the Imam right now. Let's do backward deduction. Let's go back and see what is it that you did that made you choose that.
I mean, firstly, I'm neighbour of Ustad Muhammad. Yeah, he's from Uganda. His parents from Uganda. I was born in Kenya,
Oh,
East
mashallah.
Africa. So I came here when I was 7.
Okay.
Yeah. So primary education was in the London Borough of Lewisham. Secondary education was in the London Borough of Lewisham. College was in the London Borough of Lewisham, and then I travelled to the Islamic University of Medina. So that was, I think, 1991.
Oh, okay.
Spent there 5 years. I mean, the main reason I would say, look, at that time, you know, when I started practicing initially, at the age of 18, 19, the key thing was to learn the Arabic language and to understand the Quran.
Wow.
So when I would hear, you know, the Taraweeh prayers or the Imam reciting ayats, that kind of passion, look, I need to know, I need to understand.
Straight away, you've identified the core aspects.
That was the main thing.
Okay.
But how did you know that would, like, is it just something that came to you, or do you think it was tarbiyah, or what do you think it was?
You know what, sadly, there wasn't much kind of like in terms of tarbiyah around, especially in Lewisham. In Lewisham, you would not see a hijabi sister. You would not see niqab on the streets. You would not see Muslims at all.
Wow.
It's a very small community. Yeah. So there wasn't much in terms of tarbiyah from from the Muslim community. It was just kind of like that keenness and passion to understand the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I had no kind of like inclination or plan to become an imam.
Right.
It was just, you know, just understand the language, understand the Quran, and then things just, you know, planned out as, you know,
So
they
could
did.
we deduce from that, okay, you can have the himmah to become an imam, but to seek the core elements of the faith first, that will lead you to a path that's best for you. That's what you're saying, right?
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm not saying that was right, but that was my kind of like intention for that kind of like for the studies.
Okay.
At the same time, of course, you know, the element of ikhlas or of the right intention is important. But I think if somebody really wants to be someone who achieves a lot, there needs to be a plan and a vision.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, as it was the saying, Ustad Muhammad was either pick on you or Ustad. If you plan to, if you fail to plan,
you plan to fail.
So there's got to be a vision in place. I want to be an imam. I want to be a leader. This is what I want to achieve. Strategy is quite important.
What kind of led you to the point of wanting to go Medina rather than anything else? I mean, today obviously there's so many institutes around here in London where you could learn Arabic. Was it just the case that there wasn't anything about in Lewisham at the time and you had to go abroad? Or was there something that kind of led you to feel like, okay, Medina is the place I need to go?
Yeah, you know, look, the love of the Prophet ﷺ, this is the city of the Messenger of Allah ﷺ. Then it's next to Mecca. You're going to do Hajj. You're going to do Umrah. You know, so that kind of like, these are special places, a holy place, a sacred place. You know, that kind of like had a big push.
Okay, subhanAllah.
And you went, was it exactly how you envisaged when you went to Medina?
Good
Because
question.
I know they've changed, the university has changed, improved its accommodation, but how was it when you
Well,
went?
I loved it, alhamdulillah, I loved it. But you know what? I think the message, I don't know how I was, but my kind of like vision was, Medina is going to be like
The message.
what I see in the message.
Because that's all had you gone on Umrah before that point or anything?
You know, just a year before.
Okay,
just a
but
year
up
before.
until that point, that's what you thought.
No,
So there's like a gap of about
Exactly.
1400 years of nothing changed.
I didn't expect yellow cabs, people smoking cigarettes, you know.
Oh, subhanAllah. So when you got there, I mean, your majority of your life you grew up here in the UK, and then you travelled over there for your formal education of Arabic and everything. How did that? How was the impact there, or the change in your mindset when coming from here, growing up in the UK, going school here, and being in Lewisham, and that kind of environment, and then moving into Medina? What kind of like, was it like a culture shock or a change mindset, or something you had to adapt to?
And firstly, alhamdulillah, in terms of the time period was a bit special. Yeah, because we had the privilege of meeting Sheikh Abdul Aziz bin Baz, rahimahullah, Sheikh Muhammad Salih ibn Uthaymeen, rahimahullah, Sheikh Abdullah bin Jibreel, and other prominent scholars. So it was kind of like a different time period from what it is maybe right now. But I think I personally climatized very quickly.
Okay.
And I mean, I like people generally. Yeah. So, with my neighbors, with kind of the surroundings, I became part of the society. So the neighbors are friendly, you're mixing with the neighbors, you go to their house. I never isolated myself to say, look, I'm not part of this society. I felt like a person of Medina.
Okay.
So it was good, alhamdulillah, it was good. I didn't find like a cultural shock and stuff. And generally Medina, the people of Medina are very kind of like friendly and nice and so on. They make you feel welcome.
Did you ever want to leave? Sorry. Did you ever want to leave when you were coming to the end of your studies?
No, but at the same time, you know, I was very passionate in terms of work, community work. Yeah. And I felt kind of like, you know, the people back home, back here, the need is there. I wanted to come back. Yeah.
Okay.
Building on that, Sheikh, when you were in Medina, were there kind of things that you took specifically from your experience? Obviously, you kind of interrelating with the people there. What would you say kind of made an imprint? Because obviously, when you came back throughout your studies.
So when we were there, you know, they like kind of like you could say the first bunch of British kind of like Muslim students to come to the Islamic University of Medina. The surroundings were tough. The lifestyle was very tough. You know, I had my family there, so that was extremely tough because financially it was kind of like a struggle. Yeah. So I remember some days, you know, they would give us at that time 500 riyals a month. And that's supposed to be for rent. Yeah, that was like a grant from the university. For rent, food, everything, clothing.
Everything was just 500 riyals.
Now 500 riyals, I would say that time is probably around 80, 70 pounds.
Wow.
Now that was my wife and 3 kids. Yeah. So alhamdulillah, I saw in a way, look, Allah Ta'ala preparing me for something, you know, to come later on in life. So I found that a struggle. And I remember some days, you know what, it was like, I remember some of the neighbors, they would, you know, they would like students. So they would leave tomatoes or fruit and vegetables. So I remember a few days, there was literally no food in the home. And I imagine, I remember a neighbor putting a box of tomatoes, and I was actually like, the family enjoyed it. It was like a food, you understand? And some days you're just living on porridge and stuff.
Wow.
Yeah, because, so that kind of like, I think was building character.
Okay.
So some of the challenges that you might face later on your return, Allah Ta'ala's, you know, giving you kind of like a...
Sorry to interject. Could you take that sort of example and compare it to unemployment in the UK, how we should have trust in the rizq coming from Allah? Do you think that could be like a crossover?
I think yes, as long as, you know what, a person is striving for employment. Yeah, you're striving to change your circumstance, but khalas, qadar Allah, this is your circumstance. You bear that with patience and Allah's preparing you. Of course, not everybody, you know, some people are, you could say, a bit lazy in that regard and so on.
Do you think that also helped kind of shape your studies while you were there in terms of how passionate you were for your knowledge, because you were, you know, going through not having much food, but you still wanted to go ahead and make sure your studies were done? And do you think that would be different maybe now for students that are going to Medina now?
I think the lifestyle has changed and things have improved. I think the main thing also which helped, it kind of like developed my wife.
Okay.
Yeah. So, you know, sometimes somebody might call in the home number and say, look, where's your, can I speak to, you know, the Imam or Shakeel? And she would say, look, you know, he's in his other home, meaning the masjid.
Right.
You know, so the work element, the amount of work, being away from the home, it kind of strengthened her maybe more than myself.
Okay, so,
you know, so that's kind of like also been a big kind of like, So
going through that sort of difficulty helps the social surroundings?
Definitely.
Okay.
Yeah. Remember the Prophet ﷺ, some of the things some of the ulama mentioned, that his early childhood, father dying in his womb, mother dying when he's 6, then his grandfather dying. All of that was a preparation for, you know, for the Risala and the Nubuwwah that was to come later on in life.
Yeah.
So then following on from that, after Medina, you came back here, and then how soon after did you continue your studies at the Markfield Institute?
I came back in 1996. There was a local masjid. At that time, it was known as Lewisham and Kent Islamic Centre, not Lewisham Islamic Centre. So we were also covering some of the surrounding areas in Kent. Small masjid, was a house. So 1996 came, then I was volunteering, teaching in the madrasa, doing the khutbah when the Imam, you know, would travel and so on. In 1998, the Imam then, Dr. Hafiz Jazmia, he travelled to America you know, for work, and he asked me to become Imam there. So I became full-time Imam in 1998, and I think the masters I started in Markfield in 2004. So it took a few years, you know, I settled in first and we moved to the new location in 2000. In 2004, I thought, you know what, got a bit of time now, things are a bit settled, let me kind of explore the avenue of a Master's in Islamic Studies.
Did you have like the vision in mind that when you got that job and as an imam in Lewisham that you wanted to do that masters in Markfield, or did it kind of just play out?
So even the imam position wasn't part of the plan. Yeah, I just came back. I was helping, assisting, and then he offered this position to me.
Yeah.
So even at that time, I remember telling him, look, you know what, it's a temporary position until you come back or you find somebody suitable. I didn't envisage, look, 20 years later, I'm still going to be there. Yeah. So, you know, Plymouth Rock, like that, on top of me, as I mentioned. Yeah. Yeah. So, but as kind of like, you know, time planned out, I thought, you know what, it'd be good to kind of like get back into education. And
how important is it to, as an imam, to be well grounded in Islamic education? Let's say, for example, a degree in Islamic university. Do you think that is a necessary requirement for imam in this day and age?
Again, yes and no. I mean, yes, in the sense that, look, if you want to be able to outreach, not just within the Muslim community, the non-Muslim community, and they respect these credentials, isn't it? You say, look, I've got a PhD, I've got a master's, I've got a degree in this. You know, when you're being introduced in a lecture that is, you know, to a predominantly non-Muslim community, that's another side issue, mate. You know, that we've generally also isolated ourselves as Muslims.
Yeah.
Yeah. You might have a masjid, you might have a few Muslims, but there's no engagement and outreach with the non-Muslim community. It's very important for them to kind of like understand Islam. No, in the sense that, look, it's not a criteria to say that you're well grounded in Islamic sciences. Yeah, you've got a degree in Islamic studies doesn't mean you're well grounded in traditional sciences, whether it be of fiqh or, you know, theology and so on. Yeah. Yeah. So a bit of a yes and no. Yeah. And ideally, both need to be incorporated. Have that traditional knowledge, traditional sciences, same time, get that qualification, because that can assist and help you.
An interesting point that you make is this idea that obviously as the imam passed on kind of the reins, and at that point you weren't quite sure, is this going to be temporary? Do you also feel that in the day and age that we live in, there's a need to do a kind of handover process, even if it's kind of smooth, but to kind of groom the next generation of imams?
Yeah, I think very, very important. So we have, for example, Imam, I don't know if you've met him, Imam Dabus. He started in September 2018, so he's like an Imam at the mosque. And you find a few of the masajid in London have accepted young Imams, have recently graduated. And like we said earlier, the work can be overwhelming. So that support, guidance in terms of, look, focus on this for the time being, don't get involved too much in this, especially some of the counselling issues becomes a bit overwhelming. You know, for the time being, just, you know, get a feel of the role and responsibility, and gradually you kind of like over supervision, direct them towards, you know, other roles and responsibility. I think it's important. Yeah.
How different would you say that aspect of an imam within the community, within the masjid, would be different to somebody who just went to study in Medina and then came back and is kind of just teaching classes, but is not like an imam in a masjid? How different do you think that is, that kind of role? In
terms of being an imam and just that?
Yeah, being like just being an imam. That you, I mean, you both went to the same institute. You both went to study at a university and gained the Islamic qualifications. But one, for example, in your case, became an imam in the community, and somebody else maybe just is at the masjid or is frequently at different masjids as teaching classes and things like that. Is there like a difference between the two roles, and what do you think is the main sort of difference?
I mean, I think firstly, you know, everybody, you know, is contributing. Yeah, in their best, you could say, capacity. So those who are teaching or traveling, alhamdulillah, they're contributing, and I think that need is there, because there's always somebody calling and asking, look, can you come here, can you come there? If somebody's fixed in their role inside a mosque, they will not be able to kind of like serve the needs of those others. At the same time, I think that leadership role, you know, which, if I was to ask you as youngsters, and Shuaib, of course, you know, pick on Shuaib Day today, pick on Shuaib Day, yeah?
Just want to clarify, you know, I'm 22 years old.
Inshallah. No, in terms of, do you think there are enough leaders out there from the Muslim community that youngsters can look up to? What would you say?
I think it's starting to grow.
Okay,
definitely.
But not enough out there.
No.
Is this to do with outreach, isn't it?
This is to do with the outreach, you know? So you need not just teachers, you need leadership positions.
Yeah.
And an imam is more than just somebody teaching or leading prayers. And of course, some might have that perception. You just lead the prayers, close the masjid, do the madrasa. I think the vision is to be much, much bigger. That you're not just a teacher or somebody that leads prayer, the salah, you are an imam of the community. And pushing the boundaries a bit more, I would prefer if youngsters and imams, young imams, were leaders of everyone. Yeah? You look at Muhammad Ali as an example. Yeah? You saw his janazah.
Yeah.
Yeah? Imam Shakeel led his janazah.
Yeah.
But who was there? Everybody came. He was a leader for everyone. Malcolm X was a leader for everyone. The Messenger of Allah led everyone. The Sahaba led everyone. We need those leadership positions for our youngsters that they can look up to and say, look, you know what? Yeah, this is what we want. This is what we need.
Leader in a specific, like for example, every part of society, there should be a leader for a Muslim, as long as what it's doing is just, it's within the religion of Islam. You're saying that that's missing, that there's just one or two direct pathways. Isn't that to do with management itself then, perhaps? That we don't facilitate for this kind of sort of organic growth?
Definitely, we don't facilitate it. The vision is not given to youngsters.
Yeah.
Some still have that vision of, look, we're isolated.
Yeah.
These are non-Muslims. Should you really engage? These are non-Muslim issues. You know, gang crime, knife crime.
Yeah.
It's not really affecting. I mean, it is, but you know, some might say this is not affecting the Muslim community.
Yeah.
That's not right. So the vision needs to be given them. They need to be managed. They need to be directed. They need to be supervised, and so on. So you know, we create leaders, inshallah.
A bit like this. You said the example you mentioned with the Sahaba, like how they had different roles. They played different roles. They used. Which Sahaba was it that was speaking to the leaders of Abyssinia?
Ja'far ibn Abi Talib.
Ja'far ibn Abi Talib. He had a specific talent of speaking. He was an orator. And he was against, at the time, Amr ibn As. And so like, they used him for that role.
Yeah.
And he played that role according to Allah's will, and it was successful. So you're saying that the way that the Sahaba were was very grassroots, and so that growth led to a lot of people becoming leaders in different things.
Exactly. I mean, I would say, look, Muhammad Salah is a leader today.
Yeah.
Muhammad Salah, the footballer, is a leader.
Yeah.
Yeah. Muhammad Ali was a leader. Malcolm X was a leader. And like you mentioned, Ja'far ibn Abi Talib, Abu Huraira in Hadith, Ubay ibn Ka'b in Quran, Abu Bakr, Umar, all of them leaders in their fields. But we need this.
But that's not for everyone, is it? Because some people may feel that I just want to sort of take care of myself, my family, kind of have my solo life that is in my own sort of hub. I go to work, I provide for my family, we have children, we grow up, we learn the deen, you know, and that's what they want to do. So would you say that that's acceptable for us to have as a vision for ourselves, or do you think that every sort of Muslim male or female should be looking for a higher vision in terms of leadership?
So look, let's take examples of, you know, great football players. Yeah, many great football players 5, 10, 15 years ago. My generation, there's names. Who remembers them? You tell your kids, or you tell others. You know, Brian Robson. Yeah, who's Brian Robson? He used to be captain for Man United and England, but they don't remember them.
I have no
idea. Because
See,
exactly,
young.
You are young. You are young.
If United, right?
He used to play for Man United. Your team, yeah?
Yeah.
He remembers.
No football politics, please. Not on this show.
He's got an Arsenal shirt underneath, though.
No. I'm United.
United, is that why you went to Manchester with me, yeah? MashaAllah.
So the point being, in terms of, you know, that leadership, you kind of have to have that vision. What am I going to leave behind as a legacy, and how will I be remembered?
Yeah.
If Muhammad Ali didn't take those stances, the Vietnam War, wasn't proud of his Islamic identity, and you know, supporting the struggles of the African American community in America, he will not be remembered today. Malcolm X likewise. Those Sahaba that we remember every day. The Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he left a legacy that we, each time we mention his name, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, in adhan, in salah, we mention him.
What Ibrahim alayhi salam talks about when he makes dua, to give me an honorable mention later generations as well. That could be like a form of leaving a legacy. He's actively seeking it by making dua to Allah. Could you give that as an example?
Yeah, exactly. So it's about leaving something behind, and isn't that Islam is it's a doing word, you know? We're submitting, we're doing something.
Question then. Does that come under the remit of an imam to give people that the boost to become leaders in their own ways? Is that something you'd consider a role? Because I want to now push the discussion towards the role of the imam itself. This discussion that you seem very passionate about, I can only assume that this is something that you want to see in the Muslim community that you actively put towards your masajid, your masjid that you're in? So do you believe that that's your role as an imam, to bring people, to bring the best things, to bring the best out of people and to make them become leaders? Is that what you feel?
Let me ask you that question. You three brothers, Shu'aib, Asim, Muhammad, you go to a masjid, your local masjid, you engage with the imam. Would you see that, or do you expect that to be a role of an imam?
They're in their own way. In their own way. Let's say, for example, you said you have like Imam Ashraf Dabus, like he's doing a series on Instagram on the Seerah shorts and things like that.
Yeah.
With the Ustad Hajjaj.
10-15 minute clips.
Yeah, mashallah. So because maybe you could say he wants to inspire leaders. He's an imam, isn't it?
Yeah.
So, but you're doing it in your own way. That's according to the manners of a masjid, or?
Yeah. No, but would you expect that? I would say yes. To your question, I would say, look, yes, of course. I would expect that.
Yeah.
I think I would expect it, but the reason why I kind of struggle to answer is because I can't see an example from an imam, like an imam in the masjid, that does that already. So I can't confidently say that, yes, I expect it from that imam that I'm thinking about, because I actually don't see it yet, and multiple. But I do see it. The reason why I asked that previous question between the difference between those who teach and those who are imams, because I see that kind of nurturing from teachers that I go to. But they're not necessarily imams in a particular masjid and are leading a particular community, but they are just regularly teaching in institutes or private classes. And I see that kind of, they're providing that tarbiyah and that kind of leadership qualities and nurturing from that aspect. But from the imams that I might see in the masjids that I go to locally, I don't see that. So that's why I'm not confident to say yes.
I think two things to that. Number one, sometimes the community don't expect that from imams, and thus don't push imams towards that.
Right.
Yeah, and that might be a cultural perspective. Back home, maybe the imam just does lead the prayers. So that's all they expect from the imam here, in the United Kingdom and so on. So that's one issue.
Even in countries, apolitical countries, Muslim countries, they do the exact same with imams. Their role is just to pray.
Yeah.
Okay, carry.
Yeah. But as an example, you mentioned, you haven't seen anyone. I would say, look, Imam Sirajul Hajj is an example. Yeah, Brooklyn, New York City. Okay, he's an inspiration. Yeah, he's a leader, and he's created leaders. Sheikh Abdul Qayyum, Imam of Islam and Masjid. Yeah, he's an inspiration. He's created leaders. So there are. We just need to look for them, but also we need to direct people towards it. Ummah needs to change.
And put that expectation as well forward, so first you're seeking it out yourself, but also when you do find it, you're maybe you're facilitating for them to mirror that back to you.
And also keep in mind, let's not expect the change from someone else.
Sure.
We need to look into the change, ourselves. And I'm saying, if you find imams that they're not around, those imams, khalas, you make that direction. You've got a medium now for discussions on this topic. You bring other youngsters and ask them these questions: who can be an imam or who can be a leader? So create that narrative where, inshallah, 5-10 years down the line, we do have those leaders, inshallah.
Yeah, I mean, now that you mentioned that, I mean, it still ties in with the subject of role of imams. I have come across young imams that have really inspired me. And inshallah, one of them might be listening to this podcast now. He could be teaching me Nahw in a few months. But we had a small discussion, and I'm going to talk about that discussion. I made a post a few months ago about how, generally speaking, I feel that as a Muslim community, we need to, given our young age, our lack of responsibilities, we don't have children, we should try to get both aspects, both deen and dunya, so like Islamic knowledge and academic knowledge. Try to see what suits us, and take as much Islamic knowledge as we can, obviously. And I was saying that on both sides, I feel like people who are going to Islamic universities, it doesn't mean that they can stop their academic knowledge. They can also read about the current times. And people who are also doing academic knowledge, it doesn't mean they just don't bother learning Arabic or learning Quran.
Of course.
Tadabbur is a beautiful way of keeping close. So I was thinking that as we come closer, as we build that bridge, we connect with each other, that will have a better organic growth as a Muslim community. And he was having a discussion with me after. He said that, now that you've said that, I've been around pious people all my life. because he's Alawiyah grad. He's studying Alawiyah at the moment, and he's been around pious people. Like he doesn't. It seems weird if you meet someone who's probably not a Hafiz of Quran or doesn't know enough Arabic. He told me that honestly, and I said, Subhanallah. I was like, you know, I meet people that would love to be in your shoes that are nowhere near achieve the Hafiz of Quran, and they're not. And so he was like, really, let's set up a course. And he was saying maybe I could do like an Arabic course. And so like we're having that sort of network, that sort of nice discussion. I feel that like, you know, Imam should do that. An Imam, like for example, my previous madrasa that I was working in, there's also a young Imam who just recently was appointed there, and we were having discussions, and he was coming for me for advice on, for example, speaking Arabic. Now, I'm not very good at speaking Arabic, by the way. Anyone knows that I'm actually not very good at speaking Arabic. I know a few good things, and I'm very confident saying that. Yeah, like how's your family, like kayfa usaftuka and stuff like that. Yeah, but anyway, he says to me, oh, because he just graduated from Alamiya program, and he didn't have the speaking for Arabic part of the curriculum. Yeah. So he's confused. Like, you know, I noticed that you speak a lot of Arabic in the masjid. Obviously, he knows I don't know. He doesn't know that my vocabulary is limited, but I didn't tell him that. So I said, look, I got a teacher online on Skype, and I just have a nice conversation with him. Why don't you just do Bayna Yadik with him or something like that? So I can see young Imams want to like try to see. They see there's a problem here, there's a gap, and they're trying to kind of like fill that gap. And I feel like, mashallah, like when you mentioned about creating leaders, I feel like maybe there are people out there, and I have come across a few people that are really like showing that there's this sort of bridge coming now. It's like this metaphorical bridge where the classical side and the, you know, the contemporary side are sort of coming together and engaging towards a better future, inshallah.
Are you saying in terms of the Imam needs to have an understanding of both?
Like one of my mentors in Manchester, he does khutbahs in the universities, and he has his own tuition centre. And he said to me, and he has played a very good active role in society in Manchester, mashallah, I'm not going to mention his name. And he said to me that an Imam should at least do a GCSE in media. He was just saying it as a statement. It's not, it doesn't necessarily literally have to be the case, but it was a statement to show that an Imam has to know his people. And so when he said that to me, he had 25 years experience as well as an Imam. So I maybe realized that, you know what, there is a multifaceted approach that we need to take towards our own education. I think that you mentioned education.
Yeah, I think it's important. It's important. The only thing is, you know, why I ask that question, sometimes look, we might want perfection. It's like when you're looking for a wife, yeah, or a spouse. All boxes must 10 out of 10. She must be this or he must be this. That's not reality. The Imam will have shortcomings, yeah, and he can't. And sometimes, if you want to dedicate and specialize in something, remember, we're not living in the time of early ulama. Yeah, even in Islamic sciences, they specialize in every science, whether it be nahw, sarf, you know, fiqh, and so on. Okay, so things are a bit different. He might be a specialist in da'wah as an Imam, or certain aspects of an Imam, and so on. You know, so you look at whatever he can achieve, and those additional things that you mentioned, knowledge of society, you know, even a secular education up to degree level, that's important. It will help. But it shouldn't stop someone from becoming a leader and, you know, engaging in society. Malcolm X, rahimahullah, had no formal education. Probably one of the best speakers, you know, in the world. You know, so, you know, that is what needs to take into consideration.
So why did you sort of make the decision to get a master's in, I believe it was being a chaplain or something like that? Chaplaincy, right?
Islamic chaplaincy.
It was Islamic studies, and then I've done a separate, like a diploma in chaplaincy as well.
Okay, so why did you want to do that then and specialize?
Really want to know?
Specialize in that.
Recognized in society, isn't it?
No. I needed a break from the work. That was my day off. That was my day off. That I get a chance to go to Leicester. And alhamdulillah, I'm away from the community for a day. And the family, break from the family as well.
And that's the honest answer.
That's the honest answer.
Allahu Akbar. Okay, and how do you think that actually, still helped you in your role as an Imam?
It helped, alhamdulillah. You know, you're back, sometimes you're so much involved in the community. Asim is laughing,
Because it makes sense.
It makes sense, yeah. You know, you kind of like want to get back into reading, back into kind of like writing. So that kind of like,
Okay.
It is a break, but also it's kind of like you're developing.
Refresh.
It's refreshing and developing.
Okay,
so it's,
just on this point, it's a little bit off topic, but because it's interesting that you went to Markfield Institute and you went to University of Medina.
I was going to ask you some questions.
And generally, you know, I don't want to put labels on it, but generally you see a certain group of individuals go to Medina University and some group of individuals would go to Markfield Institute or Darul Uloom or whatever, right? Why did you, I mean, first of all, how did you transition from, you know, that mindset, okay, Medina University to kind of Markfield Institute, and why did you want to sort of mix that together?
Good question. Firstly, you know, the time period I went was much different. So what you see maybe today, or especially let's say 5-10 years ago, the graduates that were coming back have a different kind of, like you could say, or have one perception of, you know, how Islam should be.
Is this Medina University?
Medina University. It was much different when we went.
Right.
The teachers, the lecturers, there was a lot of foreign lecturers. Most of our teachers were Sudanese, Syrians.
Wow.
It was much different.
Okay.
And even what you were getting in terms of, you know, the understanding of Islam, much different. So if I could use a term, maybe, you know, I was open-minded.
Yeah.
You know, so I never had those labels. Look, I'm with a particular kind of like.
Never.
Not really. I was
Wow.
never that particular. Like, look, I'm with this branch or this group. You know, I was never that kind of like. So coming back and engaging with, let's say, the wider Muslim community from the, let's say, Hanafi background, Deobandi background, or Markfield, it was never an issue for me.
MashaAllah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is that right, Ustad Muhammad? You're not going to take me off the money for that?
Yeah.
But I just, because we were discussing this when I sort of saw your bio and you went to Medina and Markfield, and I thought, that's so interesting. You really ever see somebody go from one sort of branch to the other branch in terms of how you learn the Islamic knowledge. So I thought it was very interesting, and I'm assuming exactly what you said. It opens up your mind.
Yeah.
You started the open mind, and it opens it up further, and allows you. I'm guessing that it's allowed you to also sort of be comfortable in all of the areas in terms of being accepted by different ends of the sort of Islamic spectrum and the different branches that have sort of come out about now, especially across the UK. There's so many different branches that you might have of Islam, but I'm guessing it's kind of allowed you to be accepted by all of them, and most masjids across the UK would kind of be happy to have you in their masjid or to speak on their behalf and things like that.
There's a discussion me and Ustad Asim were having earlier on, in terms of, you know, the ummah being wide. Yeah, I mean, the centuries, you know, after the Prophet ﷺ and the Sahaba, those differences were there. They're all part of the ummah, of the Messenger of Allah ﷺ. So be able to, for us to understand that, they're part of the ummah, and then for us to be able to engage, you know, with them. I think it's very, very important, crucial, especially us here, when we have very specific issues in the United Kingdom that need to be addressed. Yeah, and those issues are challenging issues to all of these, you could say, Muslim groups or Muslim identities or masajid and so on. So there definitely needs to be kind of like engagement and networking.
So more specifically, as an imam, like let's just go through the actual roles. So, because this is my personal opinion, I think imams have too much on their shoulders. That they may not give justice to everything, and it screws with their head. I don't know. They probably have lots of headaches, or they can't task switch as effectively. One minute they're doing admin work. 1 minute they're doing some counselling, some serious counselling issues that could possibly affect them as well. Bear in mind, some of this.
And then somebody just randomly walks up to them in the masjid and asks them some big question that's going to affect their aqidah even. Do you know what I mean?
How do you deal with what is it exactly that you do, mashallah? And obviously, for those who haven't read the article, that he wrote a very good article on a role of an imam. And that was what led me to actually want to bring you down as well, not just me and Muhammad. So what is it exactly the role is?
I'll tell you one funny story. The sister was looking for marriage. So I found her someone, then I phoned her uncle, her dad, sorry. And I said, Uncle, look, I found someone, and you know, he's willing to come to your house. He said, yeah, this time, this day. I said, fine, I'll tell him to come. He said, can you come along?
Okay. I
said, Uncle, look, no, it's difficult for me. It's in a different area as well.
Right.
I said, it's difficult for me. I've got a lot of kind of like responsibilities at the masjid. Because, what do you mean? He said, you pray Fajr, you sleep until Dhuhr. You pray Dhuhr, then you free till Asr. You pray Asr, then you free till Maghrib. I said, no, Uncle, you know, it's a bit more different. So, yeah. Some people, you know, assume that Imam's responsibility is just that. It's the Salah, and then he's free all day.
Yeah.
And so on. But yeah, in terms of the role, if I would, look, say it in one word, leadership. Now, whatever that involves, counselling, youth work, social work, gang mediation, dealing with local authority, dealing with neighbours, teaching, educating, you know, advising the sisters, advising the brothers, fatawa, you name it. Wow. Giving the khutbah, the salah, reminders, it all comes under kind of like that responsibility.
If your thing is that, would it be okay to say it's more islahi that it's kind of centered towards rectification, less to do with ilmi, like less to do with knowledge itself. It's more to do with, let's see the situation, let's fix it. This situation comes, let's fix the situation. Like you're not a handyman, that's a very crude way of saying it, but you're a person who just keeps mending things, you know. Would you say that that's a correct way of trying to understand that kind of...
Part of it, because remember, at the same time, as a leader, you want to create a strategy.
Okay.
What is a strategy for UK Muslims and for youngsters? What do you want them to achieve? That becomes part of the role and responsibility, let's say, of an imam or a leader.
Is that what you personally believed from the start?
Not from the start.
Okay.
Right. Not from the start. Yeah. In all honesty, not from the start. But as you know, time develops, you start kind of like understanding that is needed.
Okay.
And at the same time,
you start feeling the sort of the heaviness on your shoulders and thought, I have to do something about this.
That's right. At the same time, the ilmi side, remember, that's not for the masses anyway. That needs to be there, because there are those, you know, that will need kind of like a bit more attention, and they will need to go through certain books to understand, because they want to advance themselves. But sometimes I think a mistake in the dawah might be, we kind of like, no, we make it like this ilmi side is for everybody.
Right.
And it's not. You know, it can't be for the whole ummah.
But that's a limitation with social media itself, is that the outreach is not restricted. So you post some, let's say you post a quote from a scholar, just generally a generic quote, and it's to do with in a situation that's very, let's say, mental health. Like, for example, there's no such thing as depression, for example, and there's someone who's actually going through clinical depression. He might just see that and be like, well, you know, so there's no restriction in the kind of content that's there. So maybe that's the problem with social media itself, that people are sharing these things, like lots of ilm, let's seek knowledge, ilm, this, that, and it kind of gets people in a hole.
Or a bubble.
They feel like, you know, I'm not seeking enough ilm, there's something wrong with me, you know.
And also, I mean, it might be the same case with an imam themselves, that they may, because of social media, that, you know, there may be certain things that you have to address in public, but at the same time, you want to make sure that as an imam, you're well-rounded and you're sticking to certain things that you set out for yourself. You're doing a certain thing with your community, or, you know, you're trying to make sure that your own, you know, the people that come to your masjid, they're going in a particular direction. But something may happen nationally or globally that as an imam you have to address. And then because of social media, although those people that you're taking care of your masjid, they're being led in a certain way, and that you're doing a particular project with them, but then you do something that is totally different online because you have to, they also see that. And so your kind of position as an imam, it kind of broadens and expands when actually you may have not wanted it to. You may wanted it to kind of be sticking to this particular project and things like that. So do you think that kind of proposes issues for yourself as an imam when things get exposed online and things like that?
It does. But at the same time, I think, you know, the world's become so small in the sense that, you know, you can't really focus locally too much. The emphasis might be local, but, you know, the impact of national policy is going to affect local kind of like issues. What's happening locally is going to affect national issues, and sometimes globally. You know, so that's kind of like, I think nowadays with social media, everybody understands.
Global community.
Whether you do something locally, this is going to go out and affect national issues and so on. So I think community-wise, they understand. My issue with, in terms of community focus, grassroots focus, is, look, you're building, you're creating. So let's imagine, for example, you have, you know, East London Masjid. In East London, you have a masjid in West London, you have a masjid in North London, you have a masjid in South London. Each one is building and creating leaders and discussing strategies. What will this do locally but nationally for British Muslims?
Are they interconnected as well?
And they need to be interconnected.
On that point, actually, you raise a very, very interesting point. So there's the geographical standpoint of how the masajids are based. Obviously, in South, we have perhaps more of a building process in terms of kind of meeting this demand of masajids. So there's kind of a revival now where masajids are kind of moving from the kind of local community where they're being established in the homes to actually getting planning permission, various things like this. So there's a point that I've always kind of wanted to kind of maybe ask an imam, which is what could be done more south of the river? Because there's obviously that kind of divide. People are like, oh, south is quite far, and it's a different country in that sense. And also, As a point.
They've never been to South, have they?
Yeah, I mean the preconceptions of South are just ridiculous as well sometimes.
Some brothers who they want to come and say, oh no, we've heard some bad kind of like reputation about illusion and stuff. And I usually joke, I say, look, don't worry, we'll give you safety. We'll give you a man. So
Imam Shakeel is known in the ends, so you're safe.
You got a lot of. I say it. Got a lot of brothers.
Sorry.
And just the last point was on this idea of expectation. Would you say that kind of primarily the role of an imam in that sense, in the bracket sense of things, is also to kind of manage that expectation of the following of the local community, in the sense that you've obviously got this local emphasis, but really and truly you've got to kind of work through the strategy in a way that's flexible.
I think definitely in terms of, that should be part of the role and responsibility. Now, even if we, let's say as imams don't see it, there are a lot of youngsters who perceive that. So they're looking for direction and strategy and networking. So the imam needs to understand that. Your first point in terms of masajid, I have a different take on masajid. I think what's happened, we've created disunity. Yeah? Each masjid, so, okay, you would say, look, alhamdulillah, it's a prayer place, people are doing ibadah, fine, it's true. But if masajid are establishing, and that masjid is against this masjid, and this masjid against that masjid, and when people want to engage with Muslims, they're looking at 4, 5, 10 masajid, each one differing, it's not good. Yeah. Remember, traditionally, even when you had smaller masajid, you had the Jami' mosque, which was the main one, the central mosque, and so on. So I more keen, and that's why with the Lusham community, there's a few very small ones, 2 or 3 very, very small ones. And then you got the Lusham Islamic Center. So because it's the largest masjid, you'll find most community groups, I'm talking about non-Muslim community groups, engage with. It creates a sense of unity for the Muslim in the London Borough of Lusham, that we are kind of like one, entity, and so on. So that's quite important, I think, in terms of, if there are going to be, many masajid, make them be affiliated to one main one.
One central one,
So, with, I think that, I'll be a bit critical here, I think that masajid to take a leaf out of the book of Phosis or Isox. The reason why I say that is because there's something interesting that I've seen in Phosis, or just generally with Isox that are scattered across the country, is that they will connect with each other. And they will work with each other. They will go past the divides of such and such for a specific purpose, that is to cater for the Muslims. To be at the service of the Muslims, whether that be arranging Tarawih prayers in a certain location and getting people to come for one, or having a qiyam, or football tournaments. Football tournaments is great, sport is great, food is great, but there's this, it's sort of like, let's just look past these, because obviously we didn't inherit this culture. This is coming from before. We just want to do something. I think that masajid should just have that kind of attitude, but they just get rid of that friction, like especially up north. I think up north there are a lot of masajid that I was very disappointed with, in various locations where there are lots of Muslims.
It's us pushing that. It's youngsters pushing for that. It's the community members pushing for that. It's the imams pushing for that. There needs to be a push towards that. Which some churches operate like this. They have a national body, a local body. What's the Nation of Islam? Louis Farrakhan. You'll find all the temples are kind of like part of a national body. So that creates power. So we really need to look into that.
I think there's like quite a lot of discussion, for example, from Ustad Ashraf that's at your masjid. He talks about this a lot, and a lot of other younger imams that are coming up are talking about this concept of unity and uniting between the different imams, the different masjids, the different sort of branches of Islam. But there's also, and the arguments that they have is this exact thing, is to ensure that we have power, we have strength within our community, and that we're able to establish something, that we're living here and there's something solid and established, and we can continue moving forward from that point. But there's also a counter argument that's coming, and that is saying that how could it possibly be that we could unite, all of these different branches could unite, and all of these masjids could unite, especially with all these different views that they have and these different visions they have for the community. And then you go into theological differences as well, and they're saying, no, there's too many theological differences to even unite. How would you kind of sort of reconcile that and ensure that we're actually moving in a positive and smooth direction?
I think, look, it's easily achieved, but it's about maturity and wisdom and knowledge. The Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, before he became a prophet, there was something known as Hilf al-Fudul, yeah, in which he helped, you know, the needy, the poor, the widows, the orphans, and so on. Yeah, before he became a prophet, when he became a prophet, he said, look, if they call me, the non-Muslim, to do this, I will do it again. So if the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and us, we all engage with non-Muslims. We're not Christians, we're not Jews, we're not Hindus, we're not Sikhs, we're Muslims. You would work in your specific field, whether it be in education or in any sort of employment, with everybody for a specific purpose and a specific need. Yeah. So practically we do it. So if we do it in other fields of work, why can't we do it, i.e. in our kind of like masajid? It's not to say you're going to agree with everything. Yeah. Of course there will be differences, and you know, it doesn't mean you have to accept those differences. Okay, I disagree with you, you disagree with me, fine. But we are Muslims, and we can agree on certain things and work together in those certain things. Keep in mind, in history, you had Salahuddin al-Ayyubi rahimahullah. You had Nuruddin al-Zinki. Nuruddin al-Zinki was Hanafi. Yeah, he's like the teacher or the leader of Salahuddin al-Ayyubi. Salahuddin al-Ayyubi is Shafi'i in fiqh. And you had Ibn Qudam al-Maqdisi rahimahullah, Hanbali, who, you know, fought under Salahuddin al-Ayyubi in the conquest of Al-Aqsa in Palestine. Now, those are the fiqhi kind of like differences. Now, nobody will come and say, look, Imam Ibn Qudam al-Maqdisi or the Maqdisi brothers themselves, you know, all of them fought under Salahuddin al-Ayyubi. That these are athari in aqidah. Salahuddin might have been something else in his theology. Nuruddin al-Zinki might have been something else in theology. How did they come together in such a major issue and work together? And these are the ulama or leaders that we kind of like respect and look up to. If they can do it, and we study from their books and teach from their books, why can't it be done?
Exactly. So on that, if we can understand that's how the process, how it should be, what is the issue that we need to unite upon? What is it that the particular things that, okay, we can all agree on and we can move forward together with? I think everybody would kind of understand, okay, the things that we would disagree on, because they're quite highlighted. Although they're small, there's a very minute amount of differences, they're very highlighted. And I think most people know, okay, these differences exist. But what are the kind of core things that we can actually agree upon, and together as imams, as masjids, as communities, as organizations, we can come together and just move forward?
Look, I would say something very challenging. And I would say, look, the ummah is united. Yeah, the vast majority of people are united. The lay people, who are the majority, they understand Islam probably better than many others, and they love Allah, they worship Allah, they love the Prophet. That is Islam. Why can't we come to those basic, simple principles that the Messenger of Allah taught the Sahaba, that they believed in, that they practice, and these masses believe in? Those technicalities that we might give them, they don't understand them and don't really relate with them. Why can't we go back to the simplicity, how it was understood, and unite with the people on this? And those are the masses. And there are youngsters who ask, why can't you imams unite? Why can't these masajid unite? People are eager now.
They want it.
They want it from us. It's about us now bringing about that change, inshallah.
So as your role as an imam, what kind of sort of difficulties do you think you have faced in trying to be a leader, especially in your community as Lewisham? And I kind of want to go more into you establishing yourself in Lewisham and establishing sort of this Islamic centre that has become the central body within Lewisham. What kind of difficulties have you seen through your journey of trying to actually, okay, be a positive figure within that community and make sure that Lewisham is that kind of hub? What are the difficulties that you find in that kind of journey of doing that?
I think many aspects to it here. One aspect is, it's like I think what Asim mentioned, social media, people who are maybe not in Lewisham, people who are maybe outside even UK, not understanding our needs, our context, our work, and then being critical from somewhere else, which might affect youngsters who are in our community, listen to them saying, well, you know what, this person is saying, look, this is not right, that's not good, and they get affected by this negativity. As an example, we do interfaith work. Now somebody might say, look, it means interfaith means that you're accepting other religions. Okay, I mean, there's a principle in, you know, Al-Qaeda, they have al-hukmu ala shay far'un an tasawwuri. whenever you give a verdict, you need to understand, you know, what you're referring to in its context. So, fine, maybe some people work in interfaith with that kind of understanding. We don't.
Sure.
In our discussions with the Christian community, Jewish community, other community, we never say, or they never say, we accept you to be okay, you accept us to be okay. No, we are Muslims.
Yeah.
We believe this is the truth.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we call towards that truth, and they believe in what they believe in. Now, somebody might do a video or a statement from somebody somewhere else. People misunderstand it, don't understand the context of it,
Sure.
and then become judgmental on your work and efforts within the local community. So that's a challenge.
Okay.
You know, and then you have to readdress, re-educate your community. Say, look, no, we don't mean it like this. We mean it like this. That becomes a
Brings
challenge.
you like a step back almost.
Backwards. And in the age of social media, that sometimes happens quite often.
Multiple steps there.
I
Yeah.
can see how obviously the importance of knowledge here as well, because something that they may have criticized you for was based on the internal. So they will assume that you are compromising on some parts of your faith. But if you have knowledge, you'll be able to reaffirm yourself, well, this is actually, we're not going to accept your beliefs in any way, shape or form. And so your niyyah is that.
Yeah.
So maybe perhaps that sort of knowledge is something that, basically you're highlighting here is the importance of people to do this kind of faith work, to be aware of what they're getting themselves into. Like if they're going to be MPs or if they're going to be doing interfaith work. Or for example, even if it's, I forgot what I was going to say now. Like for example, people who go into working as a businessman, they need to know what exactly is permissible, what is permissible in terms of transactions, you know, all these different things. Same should apply for people who are going to do interfaith work and stuff like that. Do you think that, so I think personally one of the criticisms I have, not with Masajid itself, but with ISOCs, or with people who are doing young people are given a lot to do. And like I said, like we spoke, we're not, you know, we're Nisyan, we're forgetful, we make mistakes as well. But at the same time, because of the Masajid community not taking the responsibility of certain things, we are taking the burden of that, and we are making mistakes. We're making mistakes in terms of how we engage with the society. But do you think that too much engaging with society, wider society, is bad or is harmful, or is there, like I said, is there a sort of balance between that?
I think you can't avoid it. Yeah, UK population of Muslim, 4-5%.
Yeah.
Yeah, globally, you cannot engage with those who are non-Muslim. That needs to take place. Yeah, and I think what you mentioned, key issue, knowledge. But I think the knowledge issue is understanding the context and environment you're in. Somebody from somewhere else saying, look, you know, in London, in Lewisham, in Britain, you can do this or you can't do that. Not understanding what exactly that means. Yeah, that's kind of like very important. To understand the context of everything and the works is crucial. Otherwise, you will come up with wrong verdicts, wrong decisions, wrong judgments, and so on.
Yeah. Okay.
And also, sorry,
Yeah.
in terms of you don't engage with the non-Muslims, they're going to have a perception of you, your institutions, yeah, because you haven't outreached. It's not ready for them to come and ask you. We're supposed to, as Muslims, outreach and let them know.
Yeah.
This. I'll give you an example. So we had a Sri Lankan chap, youngster, Harun by the name, his name, and he accepted Islam.
Mashallah.
So he accepted Islam and he was coming to the masjid, and then, you know, he stopped coming for like a month or 2 months.
Wow.
So I called him. I said, look, Harun, where are you? I haven't seen you in the mosque.
Yeah.
No, my mum and dad don't want me to come. So, what do you mean? Yeah, now they're kind of like worried, this and this. I said, look, let me speak to mum and dad. Let me visit them. So I went to the house.
How old is he?
It's been a while, so I think he's probably now about 30, yeah, or 28, probably accepted Islam was about 18, 19.
Okay.
He was young at that time. So anyway, went to visit the mum and dad. I said, look, I'm the Imam, come to the mosque, see what services we offer, what we're about. They came, saw the mosque, dad came a few times, eventually dad took the Shahada.
Wow.
Key thing, they started letting him come back, you know, and that's because, look, you're outreaching, you're engaging.
Exactly, yeah.
And that's very important. Otherwise, they will have perceptions of you that are wrong perceptions, you know, from the media and so on.
So on the flip side, what have been some of the positive changes that you've seen have been made in Lewisham since you've been there and since your development over the past 20 years, including kind of things that you've been able to establish in your vision that you wanted for Lewisham? What have you been able to establish positively, and what kind of positive changes has that made in the community?
Okay, alhamdulillah. One thing I want to mention importantly, so you know people have the correct understanding. I kept on mentioning your responsibility, your duty. You need to push. So very important with the Lewisham kind of like experience. You know, it's the community. It's not me.
Okay.
Yeah, sometimes, you know, we have Eid Salah or Ramadan Tarawih or programs, and people will come and say, look, Jazakallah khair, Imam. So listen, it's not me. Look at those volunteers.
Yeah.
They facilitate this. They do this. They do the hard work. I'm sometimes just a spokesperson. You know, so that's very important. It's a community that have kind of like made trustees and the community and the staff and the volunteers that have made major kind of like achievements. I would say one major achievement is that you can find in Lewisham, Muslims are respected. Yeah? You can walk down the street and Assalamu alaikum.
Yeah.
Wa alaikum salam. Salam. Peace.
Wow.
That in itself is a big thing.
Yeah.
For an average Muslim to be walking down, you know, Lewisham High Street and be respected and in their hijab or, you know, whatever, you know, they're wearing, it's a big thing.
So they should have that as a vision, you're saying? Muslim community leaders and people who are working in the Sajid.
I don't think we had that vision. But because we've done a lot of work, outreach work, it just came about. But yes, I think that should be a vision. But that means a lot of engagement in terms of, you know, look, there's a lot of issues in terms of, you spoke about like, you know, racial issues, being anti-blackness and so on. Now, you're not engaging with the black community. You're not kind of like, they're going through their issues in terms of racism that we said, you know, it's not my issue. But they're being targeted unjustly because stop and search, being black, you know, and so on. We weren't a part of it. I'm trying to say, look, we need to outreach and be part of the struggles of the oppressed. And if we are, they'll be there for you. Yeah, and that's when then you earn kind of like, it's alliances, but also it's respect. And it's the way of the prophets and messengers of Allah. They were the downtrodden and oppressed and so on. So that needs to change as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any other sort of positives that you've seen over the past 20 years as well? Or anything that you've sort of seen that's been implemented through kind of the vision that you wanted?
From what I see from the youngsters, and again, you know, not me, community and the youngsters, their own kind of like dedication, hard work, the sense of pride that you have as a Muslim, as a youngster. Yeah. So, you know, I remember a chap, he became a Muslim, a youngster, he was a white chap, and he was telling me, look, his sister's looking into Islam. So I'm telling him, look, you know what, be careful in school, you might get bullied. He goes, no. Muslims are respected. He's like secondary school, yeah, with their identity. So, yeah, this is a few years back. I mean, things have changed with that as well. Not everything is positive. Things have changed even in Lewisham and South London. Yeah, you know, of course, the media generally, you know, always has a negative portrayal. So things have changed drastically. But I think that sense of, look, a youngster feeling proud of his or her identity. You know, you've got people with caps. You'll see sabr, hub, you know, one ummah.
Yeah.
It's sunnah to smile.
That has an impact. Do you think that has an impact?
It's showing you, look, they're proud. They're proud of their Islamic identity.
They'll wear it on their clothes now.
That's it. It's a big thing. I mean, it doesn't have to be. You have to wear a thobe. But someone wearing a baseball cap with, look, hubb on it or sabr on it, or wearing a t-shirt saying one ummah. You know, or
could you
it's his way or her way of saying, look, you know what, I'm proud of this identity.
Could you consider that a form of a victory, in the sense that it's like the outcome of a lot of outreach that people have just become? Like when you mentioned secondary school about how at one point in time they were they were looking up to Muslims. That's so surprising to me.
I want to go into a little bit of sort of the political angle, and we know that, of course, we've seen the things that you faced with the BBC and you know, some of the accusations that were made against you and things like that. First of all, do you think that just comes with being an imam, or at least being an outspoken imam in the community? Do you think these kind of accusations that you may have of extremism or of being labelled a certain way, or being accused to be with a certain group, do you think that just comes with it? Or do you think that it's because you put yourself in a particular space and so they found a way to attack you?
You're going to get me nicked outside. I just say, I can neither confirm nor deny it. I'm joking. Keep in mind, you know, today we respect Muslims, non-Muslims, leaders like Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, Nelson Mandela, and others. They were called extremists. Yeah, they were called extremists. So, as Malcolm X, he said the media at times can make the victim seem like the oppressor, and the oppressor seem like the victim. And I see that in my case, because all I done was, I had a stance against the prevent strategy. I had a vocal position in terms of the Palestinian resistance and struggle.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, and my kind of like upbringing. Remember, I generally, in South London at that time, very few Muslims. My friends were from the Afro-Caribbean community.
Yeah.
From primary to secondary to college, my close friends from that community.
Yeah.
With that, I saw Roots, the first edition of Roots, not the second one, when I was in maybe 11, 12 years old.
Okay.
So that kind of like, you know what, it pushed me towards the oppressed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Then reading about, you know, the struggles of the Native Americans,
Yeah.
the Aborigines and so on. I was always inclined to look, you know, the oppressed need to be defended, and we need to speak about their issues. And then when I started learning about Islam and practicing Islam, and I've seen, look, the prophets and messengers, they were on the side of the oppressed, and they stood up against injustice and oppression. So that was all. You know, it was kind of like the prevent strategy. It was something about, you know, what the Palestinian resistance and struggle. And of course, you know, they didn't like that, and that was deemed to be extreme and so on.
Do you think as an imam you should avoid that in this day and age, because that may happen, that you may get labelled, you may get pulled up in the media, and then that could possibly damage your reputation or damage your career in the kind of visions that you set for yourself? So should, as an imam, you should stay away from that? Or do you think that, no, because it's oppression and because this is part of our deen, we need to speak about it?
Okay. I would say, again, going back to you three brothers, what would you expect from an imam? Yeah? What would you want from an imam in those situations to do?
So picking up on the point that you mentioned earlier in terms of an imam being engaged in the local community, I feel like that's a byproduct of being positionally placed in, say, XYZ in a community. And especially living in the West, where there are multifaceted issues that you need to deal with, there is an element of engagement that can be to a greater extent or to a lesser extent, depending on your community. So I feel that there is a need, definitely, to call out certain things, because you feel there is this clout of normative values within Islam that are being attacked from all angles. And there is an element of putting that right. So I feel like there is a prerogative.
You would expect that from, let's say,
definitely.
a leader and an imam. What about you brothers?
I'm quite unapologetic about it. I think that just go out of it and say it. If you know that that's what needs to be said, say it, because if you don't say it, they're going to pull you up at some point or another. And if they don't, then I think in one way you've actually failed in your role, because you haven't been able to have an impact in your community.
And one of the other things on that point, Imam, is that if an imam doesn't say it, who else is going to say it? Is it the followers? And are they qualified and credible enough with their ilm that they have to be able to say those things?
And are they going to have the confidence to say it if their leader's not saying it?
I think, look, the weakness is us, you know, as a community. And, you know, we need to strengthen the imams to be vocal. And I'll give an example of Nation of Islam. Look, you probably, you know, listen to Louis Farrakhan, don't take the money.
We're not promoting Nation of Islam
in terms of, look, he speaks about issues, and he's respected, and he's got community, and he's very well spoken. And so on. We need to take lessons and learn from those things. Now, I was with a youngster from the mosque, a young kid from the madrasa, and you know, we're in Lewisham, and there was a poster. The poster said, Victoria and, what was it? And Abdul. So I said to him, I said,
that movie?
The movie, it was a movie, maybe 6-7 months. And I said, look, what do you think of this? He said, very good. I said, no, it's not good. Because we don't want to be. So that's the strategy long term. What do you want Muslims, young Muslims and generations to come to feel in this environment? That they are Victorias and Abduls, second class, servants? No. So, but you know, we're as good as anybody else. We're equal as anybody else. We would say as Muslims, look, we're better because look, we believe in Allah Ta'ala and the Messenger Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. And that means giving them the confidence to be vocal and criticize what they see as unjust. I see it's very important as a strategy long term.
Once you've pushed yourself there, it's like you can't stop. Now that you've put yourself out there, that's when, like, it reminds you of the verse in Surah An'am or Surah Araf. قل إن صلاتي ونسكي ومحياي ومماتي لله رب العالمين. Say my prayer, my sleep, My life and my death is for Allah, Rabbul Alameen. So like you kind of just like, you just put yourself there and there's just no...
No going back.
There's no going back.
No
And
going
I
back.
think that when I was ISOC president, I felt like I did put myself in certain situations where I actually said, well, I've done this now. I've put myself in a really sticky situation. I don't want to go back now.
In a negative way, in a positive way? Do you refer
in
are you saying
in a
negative
positive way? Like once
Okay.
you've gone over that hurdle of stop
Okay.
caring about the negative perceptions, you just say, that's it. I'm going to take my life isn't for my life isn't for criticism. You know, it's much deeper than that. It's
Just to
much-
pose it back, didn't you think that that's more like respectful of the person? So that might just be a personal thing. So, like another individual might not be able to deal with that. They might feel, okay, I'm outside my boundary, too far enough here.
Of
I
course.
don't think I can reconcile this anymore.
No, of course. So we know that Allah does not burden us all more than it can bear. But I will say that if you would, I love the way you mentioned about strategy. Like it's just made me change my perception. I was too busy focusing on this message. The message is wrong. Now you're talking about how everything can be right. And it's a really good discussion to be having. I think the listeners probably agree with that as well. Yeah. But one of the things that's made me think actually to answer that question is that I think that if Imams do these difficult decisions of standing out for the right reasons, obviously, ikhlasul niyyah, but more importantly, they're on the truth.
Yeah.
Then it will make seismic change for in terms of unity of the Muslims, much more than just giving bayan. I think that it's just the actions that we do that they really do. Like let's say, for example, this podcast. This podcast is has a very small thing in terms of to do for the Muslims, but we had to actively push ourselves out of frustration. It was out of frustration. If you look at our first episode, we talk about episode 0. Like it was just out of frustration because there is a gap between the masajid and the student-led activism, and we just out of frustration. We just wanted to wanted to get the normal Muslims to see the people who have gone to conservative sides and how they're just normal people and they just care about the same things, you know, in terms of the outreach. And I think that, like, you have to put yourself in a difficult situation to see the beauty of it. I think, especially in terms of the perspective, you know, everything's for Allah and you know.
And I think in terms of, you know, community support, that the community support those individuals.
Yes.
That inshallah it pushes, it encourages them, and also inshallah, you know, we start kind of like working towards our vision. Of empowerment.
It's a bit like a chicken and an egg in a way, because do you wait for the community to be more educated in their political ideas and be more vocal politically, or do you wait for the imam to do that role and then the community follows through? Which way do you think it works?
I think you don't wait, Akhi. You know, whoever has the understanding, whether it be from the imam side, from the community side, needs to push towards it and just act. Otherwise, you know, they're waiting on him, he's waiting on them. We never seem to then kind of like move forward. And again, political participation, that's another issue that kind of like you mentioned. You know, some Muslims are aloof to it or feel, you know what, Islamically, we shouldn't do it. That's another issue in itself. You know, if you don't engage with the kind of like political kind of like system in place, how will you bring about change? You know, so that's another, you know, kind of like issue in itself that needs to be kind of like, and again, some might see as negative, but again, it's, you know, not understanding the context of the environment that we're in. And
that might be another point on trying to unify the imams and the organizations and the masajid on that particular point.
Definitely.
On that point as well, so there's this idea that the best people to kind of lead the community are those that have kind of lived the context. But at the same time, those that have perhaps been outside of that are maybe in a better place to come in with a kind of fresh slate, kind of fresh perspective. How do you kind of reconcile with that? Because we're having kind of a revival, as we were mentioning earlier, of young imams coming from within, but also the balance of those that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by his fadl has blessed us to be able to come with us, as in to migrate from other lands to be with us here. How do you see that?
I think sometimes, you know, you will not fully appreciate a culture and understand a culture until you've been a part of it. That's not to say, look, you disengage with others. You know, everybody can inshallah offer something, and there's experience, there's wisdom, there's knowledge, and there needs to be shura and consultation with anybody. They might even be living abroad. You don't cut the ties. We're a global ummah. You engage, you ask. But there's a context here that only somebody who's been brought up, you know, as an example, I'll give you an example now. You know, sometimes in some countries, the interaction between men and women is minimal. Yeah. If you were to ask me, say, look, you know, I'm in university and I've got a classmate and we pass by and she says hello, I say hello, and I say to you, look, you can't do this. You know, don't give her your notes or something. Is that realistic and practical from an Islamic perspective? Yeah, I'm saying. Yeah. And for me to say, look, you're doing wrong, would that be a right statement? No. Some others might not understand it from another kind of like society environment. Sure. So those who are in this context understand, you know, the context better. They need to be kind of like involved.
And even locally, I mean, you said you went to primary school in Lewisham, you went high school in Lewisham, you went college in Lewisham. You went to study, you came back to Lewisham and you spent 20 years being an imam there. So that, even that exact local context, I'm sure, you know, you may be in the best position to actually see what actually happened in Lewisham while I was growing up and how am I going to change that.
And I mean, reason sticking there as well, I love the community there, even the non-Muslim community. Yeah. So the black community there, you know, it's kind of like a very, what's the word, strong, proud, confident community. 1977, the National Front were having a kind of demonstration. It became known as the Battle of Lewisham, and the community kicked them out. You know, so they've got that kind of legacy and history. So, and I like that. And I would engage with a lot of black community groups because I respect kind of what they've been through. You know, so that's quite important as well.
Having sort of connected with that community that is not your own, it's not your ethnicity, it's not your nationality, it's not your religious background, but there's a respect between yourself and that community. How did that come about? Because we may not see that in other localities, other sort of Muslim areas in London or outside London, other masjids, other imams. So it's interesting to know how that actually came about.
One thing is like going back to, you know, our basics. You know, the Prophet ﷺ saying, "Man ra'a minkum munkara falyughayyirhu biyadihi." Yeah, whoever sees a munkar, then let him or her change it with their hand. Meaning, you know, any sort of wrongdoing is a wrongdoing, whether it be towards a Muslim or a non-Muslim. So, as I gave an example earlier on in terms of, you know, racism towards the black community. So sometimes we address these issues. We address these issues, look, whether it be stop and search, whether it be kind of like profiling of, you know, certain ethnic communities. So that in itself creates a kind of like a bond that you're concerned about issues of others. Yeah, that's quite important. Also in terms of, you know, we've done some gang work. Okay. And these gang work was just predominantly non-Muslim gangs in the borough. And when we heard about kind of like some of the issues going on, we kind of like directly hands-on got involved, spoke to their leaders. One of the leaders from one of the gangs, alhamdulillah, took shahada, became a Muslim, stopped everything. And that again created, you know, a level of kind of like understanding and respect. I think the key issue is going out of our comfort zone, addressing issues which are issues of concern to anybody. How
uncomfortable was it? Because you said going out your comfort zone. Did you have previous experiences? You just jumped straight into the deep end.
I'm just using a phrase, maybe not for myself, but generally that will be something which you'll find most people, especially imams, might say, look, you know what, it's a bit difficult for me to do. But so that's how I use the phrase. But generally, no, it shouldn't really be something which is uncomfortable for anybody. A Muslim, a leader, an imam should be addressing the issue. That comes back to that vision and leadership. We should be able to be in positions of leadership, address any issue in society that's going on, whoever it's affecting, Muslim or non-Muslim. And that, inshallah, you know, you youngsters, inshallah, will push towards that, inshallah.
It's interesting, just to wrap up here in terms of the vision. How do you kind of reconcile that with capacity? Do the masajids actually have capacity to be able to do this? You see a masjid that's kind of, is it?
Well, we should let's talk about this.
That's a crucial issue. Yeah, you wanted to mention something. Yeah. That's, look, lack of resources. Yeah, that's a major kind of like issue. Management, strategy, direction from like management and trustees. That's a subject in itself. Yeah, and if we are going to empower our youngsters and have that vision of leadership, then these issues need to be discussed, and there needs to be a lot more support and resources for some of this work.
It's interesting you say that, because I remember seeing there was a post on Facebook, I can't remember who put it up, but they were saying how we put millions and millions into making our masajid look pretty, but we don't put that same money into actually the human resources, the imams, the management, and empowering them and making sure that they can actually make this masjid a beacon within the community, rather than a aesthetic beacon, but actually a beacon that has some sort of effect.
It goes back to understanding of deen, akhi.
Yeah.
So, okay, you want a dome. A dome might cost what, 70, 80,000. You want a minaret, might cost whatever thousand. Look, is that really the need and necessity? You know, so that perception needs to change. And again, that's more with the cultural baggage rather than a religious baggage. And again, maybe not with our context or understanding our context here. But inshallah, it's changing. Inshallah, you know, you know, look, there is positivity and things are changing fast and youngsters are changing fast. And alhamdulillah, you know, with the kind of like podcasts and programs like this in itself is a sign of khair within the ummah and amongst youngsters, inshallah.
Even, we're going to wrap up now, inshallah, but just like the masjid space, you just go there and you see that space unoccupied. It's got so much potential. And you can do qiyam in there, you can do some halaqat in there, you can do different circles, or have a halaqa in a different language, you know, bring them together for iftar, for food, you know. You could even bring them, just have a meeting with the community. You could do so much in that small space. That potential there, and it's just been left, closed, gone. Salah.
So in terms of, you know, some people, they ask, what's the vision of the masjid or your masjid?
Yeah.
And I say, look, the masjid of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So all that you've mentioned, that was it. It was a center. It was a hub for everybody. Everything is happening.
Anything
in there.
bad happened, it goes to the masjid.
That's it, and that's what needs to happen, inshallah. You know, with our masajid, inshallah.
I think we can end on that point. That's, mashallah, amazing. Subhanallah. Jazakallah khair. I don't know, Jazakallah khair for listening, guys. Subhanallah. I just sort of left in awe of the conversation, alhamdulillah. And Jazakallah khair, Imam Shakeel, for coming down and discussing all of that with us. Muhammad Asim, Jazakallah khair for being here. Just for the listeners, just to remind everybody to follow the social media. Visit our website, ibnbattutasboat.com. Social media is the same, Ibn Battuta's Boat, on everything: Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. We're obviously now on YouTube, as you can see, so make sure you're subscribing, liking, leave us a comment to let us know what you thought about all of this, inshallah, and make sure you spread the word, because there will be a lot more coming out soon, inshallah. And last thing to end on is just a shout out to Huda Television, who are our sponsors, who actually facilitated for these episodes to come out, and for, you know, our guests to come in and facilitate this for all of our viewers.
Believed in us as well.
Believed in us, has given us sort of the training, the ideas, the strategies behind a lot of what we're doing, inshallah. So make dua for them and make dua for everybody here, especially Imam Shakeel Begg. And
anything that we've said that is not correct, then that is from ourselves and shaitan. And just to end that, my verse that I read, I made a bit of mistakes, is قُلْ إِنَّ صَلَاتِي وَنُسُكِي وَمَحْيَايَ وَمَمَاتِي لِلَّهِ رَبِّ الْعَالَمِينَ. Say, truly my prayer and my service of sacrifice, my life and my death are all for Allah, the cherisher of the worlds. Now, I think I may have translated that wrong in haste, so please forgive me, inshallah, and I ask Allah to grant victory to the Muslims and to make a safe space for, and to inspire our viewers to set up and build towards a more better society where we can help and engage with non-Muslims and Muslims, inshallah.
تقل قد ذهبت أربابه كل من سار على الدرب وصل في ازدياد العلم إرغام العدا وجمال العلم إصلاح العمل جمل المنطق بالنحو فمن يحرم الإعراب بالنطق افتبل انظم الشعر ولازم مذهبي في اطراح الرفض لا تبغي